are back. You're listening to You Would Think, the Philadelphia Flyers podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Collington, and joining me, as always, Mr. Kevin Durso. Kevin, how are you?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Listen, man, it's hard to have a bad week when the Flyers win all 3 games. It doesn't really matter what the state of the team is. When your team wins 3 games in a row, it's a pretty good week.
Yeah,
But
I hear you.
And we're diving into that. We'll be breaking it all down. We got the return of Matvei Michkov to the lineup. We got the continued resurgence of Travis Sanheim. We got a lot to get into today. As we do that, make sure you're following us on social media at YWT Podcast. Yes, that does include Blue Sky, by the way. We are over there. Kevin also is. I think you're Kevin Durso at Blue Sky, right?
Because
There's
they
not
don't
an
do
underscore.
they don't do
Okay.
underscores apparently. So
But
I,
you're just at Kevin Durso on Blue Sky, but everywhere else you are at Kevin_Durso. So make sure you're checking him out there as well. And then check out the show everywhere you find your podcast, including sportstalkphilly.com. But yeah, I had to throw the new social in there. As Blue Sky picks up in popularity, I wanted to let our
for,
fans know that we are over
for,
there.
for right now, and that's the only reason I even did it. Like I've posted to everything this week. It doesn't matter. It's just the way I see it. It was another place I saw it picking up some steam a little bit. I'm like, I'm going just to
As well.
to add another outlet is what it is. It just puts it
Absolutely.
somewhere else.
And the good thing is you had a whole lot of places to post this week, but you had good things to post about. Flyers win all 3 games this week. Let's start with that Monday game in San Jose, because we were kind of looking at that
Well,
as
against San Jose, it was here.
I'm sorry, you're right. Again, San Jose and Philadelphia. Because that game had a lot of storylines riding on it. The big one probably being Matvei Michkov. And will he play? Won't he play? He did end up playing. He did look good. Kevin, break us through what you saw on Monday night.
From just Michkov or from everybody?
Just everybody, but Michkov was the big story, but take it wherever you want.
I mean, weird game. It kind of one that. I mean, it was a long game. It was kind of drawn out because of the fact that
it was a long game, didn't it?
It was. I looked this up last night. It was not the longest game they've played this season, but it's the longest home game they've had, and it sure felt like it because. Look, for me, long is different for me than everybody else because for me, the working starts when it's over in the first place. So for everybody else, it was this is 2 hours and 45 minutes because of the shootout and all that stuff. We went downstairs. We went through the process of getting. I think we had 4 or 5 different players to talk to. They got a translator on the phone for Michkov, so we did that, but that took a minute. So it was like a lot of stuff going on, and so that just drug out the night. Like it's pretty rare for me to unless I've just got a lot to do. It's rare for me to leave that place after 11 for a 7:00 game. I wasn't rolling out until close to 11:15, 11:20. And
yeah, it definitely ran.
Well, and for a game being on a Monday, that just sets the tone for the whole week. So you're like, you're catching like I guess thank goodness they had 2 days between games after that just to provide a little bit of time. And then it was a road game, no less. But yeah, weird game because it looked like if you sit there and just say the score 4-3 shootout, then it sounds like a close game. It sounds like it's a competitive game, and they really played better than the score. Probably should have won that game 7-3, if we're being honest, and they just couldn't finish.
That's fair. And you come out, you get a really great effort out of Erik Johnson right away. Scores less than 2 minutes into the game, fights off the ensuing face-off because someone messed with Matvei. And turns out when you mess with Matvei, you're probably going to end up fighting somebody else on the roster. And he looked good in the fight. Erik Johnson's not necessarily the biggest fighter on earth, but he's in there. He's a tough guy. He got the job done.
That's two recurring themes this week because we'll bring up Erik Johnson again, but the scenario you're talking about.
Yes. Yeah, and as spoiled there in our little recap there, Matvei Michkov did draw back into the lineup. He looked good. He comes out, is involved in the game right away, right? He's the reason Erik Johnson has to step up and fight is because Matvei Michkov is kind of John, and there's been a lot of that out of him. He certainly doesn't back down from a challenge. But then beyond that, he does proceed to contribute on the score, right? He assists on Travis Konecny's goal to put the Flyers up 2-0. And then in the second period, he scores. His first game back, he's already got 2 points. Like, he looked really solid, especially in the early going. He looked like he was playing with jam.
Yeah, like he came back really good for this one. Like my take on how he played throughout the course of the week isn't going to necessarily be glowing. Like he's going to have a moment the next game that we're going to get to, and I don't think he played that well at all until you get to that moment. I kind of don't remember seeing him too much until that point. Like I can run down, you know, and like one of the things we're doing on 97.3 now is I'm giving 3 stars after every game, and there's going to be a recurring theme to this too, because we're going to talk about 2 guys later that I think I made in putting the 3 stars. It feels like every game this week because they were that good. But when we get to it, like Michkov has the big moment in Thursday's game, and because of it, I made him the 3rd star. But I could have picked, like, I come away from that game and I could have put 3 other guys in over him because, and I just did it because of the moment that he has. It has nothing to do with like there were other guys who contribute to that game way before you get to where Michkov comes in. I feel opposite about it. Like there was no doubt in my mind after Monday, he was the number 1 star to me. And that was debatable too, because I could have, I guess, gone with one of the other guys we're going to talk about who did, I think you did mention him already, so I don't have to like do the tease here.
Around.
Well, because you brought up the assist. So if Michkov got an assist in the first period of that game, it's the guy who scored the goal. So that was Travis Konecny on the power play.
Travis Konecny was your best forward, probably your best forward this week, and he showed why he's your highest paid forward.
I'm disagreeing with you. Not this week.
Okay,
he's been your best forward this season.
I mean that
straight up, no questions asked. And
absolutely.
And I think Michkov's been great, but he's been your best forward. They played. I forget when I used this, but I think this might have even been the start of the point streak that he's on. But there was a game he had gone 3 or 4 games with nothing. Konecny did, which was kind of about the same time that Michkov went downhill a little bit. The benching idea kind of started, all of that. And Konecny had like 3 games in a row where he didn't have any points. And they, you know what it is? They got to that Carolina game. And I know they don't win the game, but I had said, this is a team that went out and scored, if I'm going through this, 1-2-0 in Boston. Konecny didn't have a point. 1-2-1 against St. Louis. Konecny didn't have a point. Got shut out 3-0 against Boston. So obviously no points. And you're counting as you go, 3 games, 4 goals. One of them was into an empty net. Yeah, like we even had that conversation on that week's show because it was the underlying theme of the week. They played 3 games, they won 2, but they can't score. And I turned around and I said, I wrote in the preview going into that Carolina game, well, when you need a spark plug, usually Konechny's the guy. And I know they didn't win, but he had a 4-point night. And then since then, assist in Tampa, assist in Florida, goal against San Jose, 2 points against Ottawa, goal and an assist, and now 2 goals and an assist against Buffalo. Is it good over 6 games, a 6-game point streak, to have 6 goals and then another 6 assists? Is it good to be is it good to average numbers that you see from McDavid over a 6-game period? Like,
well, and since then, as goes Travis Konecny, so go the Flyers. You scored 3 goals against Florida. You scored 3.5 against San Jose if you include that shootout. You got 5 against the Senators and another 5 against Buffalo. Like all of a sudden, you're putting up goals. It
depends. It depends though, because every one of these games has been different in that way. They could have scored like we said, they could have scored 7 against San Jose.
Sure,
they didn't deserve to score 2 against Ottawa, but they did.
Probably not. Nope.
And then I'd warrant all of the other goals. Same thing. Like they played well enough to score 5 against Buffalo when it came down to it. Like,
but at the end of the day, you know what all 3 of these games this week have in common?
They were wins.
2 points.
Well, sure.
And as
Well,
we sit here, and then listen, I know I said this before the show is a little bit of a joke, but hey, listen, I'm just saying that stat about Thanksgiving and being in a playoff position and all that happy nonsense. Flyers are 1 point out of a playoff spot right now. And again, it's super early. We're talking less than 20 games into the season for most teams.
no, but I know why you're doing this because of what was it? 2 weeks ago, we did a show where it was their
They were
one.
dead.
Maybe
You know,
it wasn't even that they were 1-5-1, but I'll use that as the marker because they like we were on here like, hey, nice win to open the season, shootout win to open the season, and then they lost 6 in a
and
row
then
and
it was a disaster
had
after that.
3 points in the standings after 7 games, and you're like,
Mhm.
oh, okay, that might be the type of team they are this year.
Well, we're
And
looking at
since then, now you're back. You went 1-5-1. Now you're 7-3-1 over your last 11 games. For and why is that important? Because it's at least to me, it's important because we do the 10-game segment thing all the time, and you've got an 11-game segment where you've won 7 games,
and
points in 5
I
straight out of this too. Like
yep.
you're piling up the points. They were like the Carolina game is a perfect place to bring this up too because we didn't come on and do the show after that game. We had a few more before we did another show, but how did that start? They finished the Carolina game. They lose. We even called it, if you're on the tank but don't tank crew, it was
was a
the
great
it
loss.
was the perfect loss because they were competitive in the game. Well, kind of. They were competitive on the scoreboard, not on the shots at all. They lose
They
the
hang
game before.
around in the game. They
Right.
give themselves a chance to win
They
it.
lose the game before it gets to overtime, so they got no points out of it. It was a game that would have drawn you in the whole way because of how close it was. And they woke up the next morning in a tie for last place in the league. And now they're up to
And
19th
and
in the league.
well, and now you look at it and go, well, if they had gotten a point in that game, they'd be tied for a playoff spot right now.
Pretty much. I mean, well, and you can take your pick.
Crazy.
No, take your
Well,
pick.
no, I know, but I
Well,
just mean that's a
yeah.
pretty easy game to
Well, no,
talk about because they were still in it with 2 minutes
well,
left
it is, but I'm saying that weekend they lost in Florida in a shootout.
in
They
the
win the
shootout.
game in a shootout. They get the point too.
Absolutely. And we, like I said, we came on this show and we started saying all of the tank words, right? We started talking about trading assets. We started talking about the trade deadline. Started talking about whose contract is expiring, who can move, what do assets coming back look like. And now we sit here 2 weeks later and it's a whole different animal. And what that tells me, by the way, now we had a little bit of a rocky start. It seems as though the team is kind of starting to slide into a rhythm a little bit. What that tells me is that your head coach is pressing all the right buttons.
It I understand how it looks. I'm not going to sit here and tell you he's pressing every button perfectly. I
And
think that,
maybe not every, the majority.
well, because I don't think it matters. I like the as great as the response has been. If a week from now we do another show, they play whatever number of games, 3 more this week, and I'm going beyond that, but I'm saying take your pick on how many games down the line you want to go. If Michkov sits out 2 more games in a row, you're still going to get riot mode from people because they want to see the kid play and they know the kid makes the team better. So that really is what it comes down to. You can sit there and talk about pushing buttons all you want to. At the end of the day, people either then you're taking him out because you really think that there's a learning experience to be had and you want to see them without him. And if
Well,
they
or
lose, they lose because we're not worried about it. But if you're going to carry the message of they want, like, the players want to win, coach wants to win, that's how we operate, and I don't care what everybody else thinks, then how do you keep a guy like that out of your lineup for consecutive games when you're talking about trying to win games? Like this is the spot, this is the spot where I thought they'd be all along. They're not in the playoffs right now, but they're not going to be a lousy team. I didn't think they were going to be. How do you return everybody and be a
well,
completely lousy team?
and for the record, pushing all the right buttons is more than just Michkov. So I think John Tortorella has earned enough rope that if he goes to that room, I'm not talking about Twitter. I'm not talking about respectfully, I'm not talking about what the media thinks about it. But if he goes into that room and scratches Michkov because, for example, he looks a little tired, doesn't quite have the legs, again, 50 game maximum, previous. I think the room will accept and respect that at this point. And when you have guys, the other buttons he's pushing right. When you have guys like Noah Cates had a good week. He started to kind of put things together. Bobby Brink started to put things together a little bit this week. Anthony Richard had a really nice week. He is starting to make a case to not go back to Lehigh Valley. Starting to.
Well, you need to find guys who step up in certain roles and make you change your mind. I see. You're turning it into a conversation about the coach a little bit. I think we got to talk about the player response, because you're playing. You've turned it around now with points in 5 straight games, wins in 3 straight wins, 4 wins in 5 games in this time period. And I just want to give kind of a list of things that would make people surprised that it happened, because you're winning these games and Sam Harrison's been out of the lineup for a chunk of it. Like, he got the win on Monday in the shootout. He was the goalie in for the loss. You've won 2 games with Ivan Fedotov in goal, 3 games with Ivan Fedotov in goal this week.
He looks like he has turned the corner a little bit and looks a little bit more like that goalie that we were.
And we can touch on him in a minute. As we continue to go down the games, but you're doing it without Harrison, who for a while seemed like the only goalie who gave you a shot to win.
The only option. The last half of last season. Yeah.
All of these games have been played without Cam York, who I think at the time that he went out with injury, everyone would have argued probably the most consistent defenseman they have at the time. The conversation is changing. The conversation is changing rapidly. That's one of the places I'm going to go. But York's out of the lineup. They won 3 games this week and we've had the conversation about center depth a lot. We're going to take Morgan Frost out of the lineup as the healthy scratch on Monday. He's got to play Thursday because, now an hour or 2 before the game starts, Sean Couturier is not good to go. He can't play lower body day to day. So he's out. And then you reverse it. But my point is that Couturier is clearly not completely 100%, whatever game you want to take, Monday or Saturday. He's clearly not completely 100%.
Was a game time decision for Saturday. Ended up playing.
Well, I think game time decision was very loosely used. It was
he took warm ups and it became pretty clear he was going.
Well, no. I'm going off of I saw stuff from morning skate.
You thought he was pretty comfortable.
Well, he said after morning skate, I'm good to go if they need me, and everybody who was there was saying he took like the rotation on the power play during morning skate. He seemed like he was in all the
pretty full participation.
Right. So like, you can say game time decision, I guess, unless something didn't feel good, 5 hours later, but
Sean was going to play. Okay.
Well, if I really had a reason to believe that it was game time decision, I wouldn't have changed my lineups in the preview to say he's in. I would have left him out from the previous game and said, well, he might. The way that everybody described it, I went, he's in, and unless something changes, then that would mean, Frost comes out. But my point being, whether you're taking a less than 100% Sean Couturier or taking just Morgan Frost out of the lineup, who I think at the end of the day, whether you like the performance or you don't, people would still agree is one of your top 3 centers, probably, generally speaking. And you won 3 games this week with a group with your centers being Sean Couturier and or Morgan Frost, Ryan Poehling, Scott Lawton, and Noah Cates. And I think 2 weeks ago, if I would have told you those were the centers after Lachenko went back and all that stuff, people would have been like, how do they win anything?
How do they have any points?
Right. How do they win anything when that's the guys up the middle? Because when think about the reason, people were less than impressed with Kate starting the year. People were less than impressed with Lawton starting the year. It was like, these are guys that are now playing a little better. I totally like Richard has been outstanding since being called up.
Fantastic.
Straight up. I mean, he quietly, you look down, and I'm just going off of the Saturday one here. You quietly you look down and then realize, he's got another 2-point game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that was after what, 9 points in 7 AHL games or something along those lines.
It was something like that. And I think we've had the conversation before about how he's a really good quad A player. Like, he always has been. Like this. Let's not forget that. Like, for the way that we've talked about when we talk about other teams, the way we've talked about Boston all those years. If you crack the Boston lineup for a decent stretch of time, and he did, enough games at least, you can feel comfortable with like, okay, you're good enough to be up here for a stretch of time. You're never going to be a top 6 guy. You're always in the bottom, but if you can provide a spark.
And you say never, but every once in a while, there is that guy who just kind of figures it out at 24, 25, 26. And we see it sometimes, like these late bloomer type guys who at 20, like they play their first NHL game at 27, but they're an all-star by 29 because they just kind of finally put it all together. And I'm not saying Richard definitely is that, but he has shown so far a good nose for the puck, a decent ability to play some two-way hockey, some really good speed, and he can get the puck towards/in the net. And for a team that desperately needed some scoring, he has really been a breath of fresh air since he's been called up. Like he's provided some punch out of your bottom 6.
Let me ask you a question because I want to see if you get. I just looked it up because this look, it's been unexpected. I like the point production I'm talking about.
I agree.
Most of the time, you just want a guy like this to hold his own for whatever number of games you need him, right?
If he gets 15 points across 50 games, you're pretty happy with it. Typically, this sort of player, right?
Well, right now, I mean, if I just looked up the last 5 games, he's one of the team leaders in points, no question about it. Like
he's got what, 8 or 9 points.
He's at 6. 6 over 5. Like let's not go to extreme.
That's fine. But still, how many players in the NHL are point per game?
Well, no, but here's the reason why I'm bringing it up, okay? Because even Michkov only has 5 in the last 5 games, if you will, right?
Last 5 team games.
Well, sure, but you get my point. Like,
I guess even his last 5 games too.
There's an element where, like right now, if your name's not Travis Konecny, you're not putting up points at that kind of clip. Like I'm thinking about, and this is guys who over the last 5 games have contributed in some way, but definitely not to the level that we expected of. Like Richard is now right at this given moment over these 5 games, he's outscoring Owen Tippett, he's outscoring Tyson Forster, he's outscoring Joel Farabee. This is not the guy that you think we're going to come back to and be like, you know who one of your best players has been over the last 5 games? The guy you called up.
Well, and maybe that says something about the lack of depth on the Flyers roster, right? Like how weak is your roster if a guy like Anthony Richard, kind of a career quad A guy, can come in and take this big of a piece of the spotlight?
I just think I don't even think it's that. I think he's just making good decisions and finding himself in the right spots. Like you look at the 2 plays that he makes in Ottawa where it's quick release, so it catches the goalie, I guess, leaning just a little bit so it leaks through. Then like the to set up the Bobby Brink goal that ties that game up, it's a good shot selection. You're playing it for a rebound. Even he said afterwards that he was doing it to try to see, just get something going. Put maybe you'll find a way to get something there. And even if it didn't go in the net, he was trying to score on that. And even if it doesn't go in, it left a rebound so they could score. But he got 2 points in like 2.5 minutes in that game by making just 2 really smart plays. And I watched the other, and I'm just using Saturday as the example because it's fresh in my mind. Joel Farabee looked like he had a goal on his stick and he gets robbed. Like I don't.
He's had a couple of those this year.
I don't think it's a question necessarily of depth as much as it is finishing ability. That you've got guys who, if they finished a little more often, would be right there with everything else. What's staggering is Konechny's doing it at a clip that's just kind of getting ridiculous right now. He's and he'll go cold at some point. We know this. This is how this works. He'll go completely cold for 5 games at one point. But right now he's on a heater. And it is so that wasn't the question I was going to ask you, by the way.
Okay.
So this is a Richard related question.
Okay.
Because when it came down to calling somebody like him up, there's not too many people down in Lehigh Valley that are going to get a call like that at that time. You hinted at his numbers in Lehigh Valley were really good. That's why he gets the call. But usually there's only a handful of people you can think of who are on the short list of when you really need somebody, he's getting the call.
Who's actually kind of ready to play some NHL games.
So I'm going with the guy who was probably, because Richard was not on the team last year, obviously. I'm going with the next guy who probably was from last year. And I'm just going to ask you a question about how many, we're talking 6 points in 5 games for Richard since getting called up. And these are the 5 NHL games he's played as a Flyer. Can you tell me what the point totals were for Ulrich Excel last season?
How many games did he play?
He played 18 last year at the NHL
18
level.
games.
Generally speaking, he's got 26 NHL games.
I'm going to say 1 goal, 4 assists.
Last season, you nailed it.
Really? I was going to say, I thought I remembered him scoring at some point. I remember a couple of assists.
Yeah. You know why you remember him scoring? He scored in garbage time against Columbus at the end of the year when they were getting just absolutely beaten to death as it was falling apart. And then it was because it was a shame. The 2 goals that night in Columbus, they lost like 6-2 or something. The 2 goals that night were Lixell and Adam Ginning, and they were both first NHL goals. And it was like, you almost can't even feel good for the guys, because it's like, by the time it happened, the game's so far out of reach and the playoffs are slipping away.
Right, and both teams are not great. The building, no. Not the best environment.
But what I'm getting at with this is 26 NHL games, 1 goal, 5 assists, 6 points for Lixell over these last 2 seasons in the limited time.
Richard's done it in 5 games.
And Richard's got 2 goals, 6 points in 5 games since being called up. Now, in some cases, that's bounces. That's whatever you want to call it. Like,
hockey's a big luck game for sure.
It can be, but he has, already created more in just those 5 games. And Tortorella said it after they called him up about how he's got a little bit more of the offensive mindset than Lixell does. So that's why they brought him up. And I think that one of the things that translates for him is the emphasis, or at least, because there's been less of it, and there's been less of it by practice this year, I would say, because I just don't think the game situations have called for as many of these as they had last year. But when the transition game is part of the factors in, he's great for it because he's got the speed. He set up Erik Johnson's goal on Monday, and he does it because he takes a neutral zone rush that looks like it's got nothing really to it, and turns on the speed, and now it's a 2-on-1. And Johnson's kind of coming in as a trailer to a degree. Like, he's still part of the 2-on-1, but he's clearly not as fast as Richard is, and comes in a little late, and it makes it perfect because it opens the space up for him to take the pass anyway. So it works out. But
yeah, I think the stretch game was a huge part of the Flyers offense last year, and as they have kind of started to become a little more successful this year, you've seen their offense stretch out a little bit more. Those stretch passes are starting to come to them.
Well, because why though? Go look at they scored 3 goals before the shootout portion. They scored 3 goals against San Jose. And if one of them's a power play goal, so that's obviously about setting up and being in a good position offensive zone wise. But Johnson scores off a rush. Richard turns it into an odd man rush. And then Michkov scores because you set up a stretch pass opportunity. He's behind the defense. They had, Konecny scoring in Ottawa was a stretch pass.
That's what I'm saying.
Opening it up.
Flyers are starting to run a little bit.
Well, because I'm trying to think of something. Realistically, though, too, I mean, Richard's goal in Ottawa was like a semi-rush because it developed into one pretty quick as they got into the offensive zone, but it wasn't your traditional rush. I would say the Brink goal was off the rush more. That was more of an odd man situation. And then we go to the Buffalo game, and you scored on a 2-on-0. You scored and maybe not the rest of them. Like, all of your other goals were more
a little more
good hard work. But every game they've played this week, to your point, has had some sort of goal where there's been a stretch pass of some kind, a get up on the rush kind of play, and it's more catering to what they were a year ago. Absolutely.
And one of the reasons they were dangerous last year is because once or twice a game, Travis Konecny or Scott Lawton or Noah Cates or Owen Tippett or somebody would be down the ice and get a stretch pass or break it out or create some offense on a rush. And you saw it shorthanded, you saw it 5-on-5.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what led to a lot of your success last year. So if they can get back to some amount of that, and I do think Richard really helps with that because he does add some speed in your bottom six. That is how the Flyers are going to be successful if they're going to be a successful team this year.
I just think it's a key part of their turnaround because
well, and what has the knock always been on Michkov, historically speaking? Doesn't play a whole lot of defense, cheats a little bit to offense. And again, I'm not saying he's doing anything wrong. I'm just saying if this team can facilitate that for him, he can start getting real dangerous. And we saw a little bit of that on Saturday with the 2-0, and even on Monday against San Jose with the little breakout. Like, if you don't see a whole lot of cherry picking in the NHL like you do occasionally see in the NBA, for example, where a guy will kind of hang out in the offensive side of the floor.
yeah, I hear you.
And I'm not saying he needs to do that. Obviously, he needs to play
No, but I
defense,
brought
blah,
up
blah, 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 blah.
no, but I brought up like how he's got like that's the Ovechkin quality, right? Like Ovechkin at the beginning
Absolutely.
of his NHL career was all offense all the time, and I'm going to stand at the opposing blue line and I want you to get me the puck.
And now he's 30 away from tying Gretzky or whatever the number is. He's getting there.
Michkov goes a little further than that. Like I think he lingers more. He doesn't go opposing blue line and be like, I'm just standing over here. He's at least around the center, the red line more, but it doesn't matter. Like he's looking for that more times than not. And to be honest, like I come from a place with this where it's like, look, I know that John Tortorella would love to see him play some form of defense at some point and be a little bit more involved with it. But I think you also have to recognize you don't have that kind of offensive guy. Like Konecny's your best offensive player and actually can play that part. So let him. So let him and let this kid who is clear offensive mindset all the time be the guy who's offensive mindset all the time. Like
absolutely.
Like he didn't score.
No, go ahead.
He didn't score on Saturday. Not a goal. He got points. I'm not taking that away from him.
He contributed offensively.
But he nearly scores a goal because he tries a sharp angle shot that he banks off the mask of the goaltender and then it hit the crossbar instead. That's going to happen. Like something that creative tends to happen once a game in some way.
Yep.
Like you tell me, and I guess we'll just shift right into him completely.
Yeah, absolutely.
The overtime goal. Shade, you tell me if I'm crazy because the more I watched it, the more I saw it. Shades of Patrick Kane. Sharp angle. I'm just throwing this thing, and I've got the skill to actually make it work.
Yeah, the only difference is though, Michkov's goal actually winning. I'm joking. But yeah, no,
I'm just saying, tell me the angle's not that different. You know what I mean?
No, it's very ssimilar. And I that's the first thing I thought watching the replay, watching it live, like all of that. When the Flyers posted it on Twitter, that video from kind of the end board shot where or kind of vaguely from the bench-ish area where he comes around kind of in slow-mo.
The one I'm saying, the one where the shot's coming towards you.
Yeah, and you really see it, and it kind of does give that little Patrick Kane, squirt between the pad and the post, and it slips in. And
if I'm being fair, the reason I'm actually kind of comparing it is because that recognition of you're the guy who took the shot and it goes in. He just like
you know it first for sure.
He breaks into celebration mode, and I felt very similar with that. Like, and that's and to me, everything about that moment is exactly what you want him to have in that spot. Score a goal, in that situation. It's overtime. Game that you have no business even being in. Dart to the other side of the ice. Do your little celebration. I'm sure you saw the picture as well. I've talked about you saw the picture that they put side by side of.
We may or may not have done a Danny Briere celebration.
It was close. It wasn't completely. It wasn't.
It had a little Danny B in it.
I'm regretting while I was at the game Saturday that I was getting, I was up over by the snack bar before the game started, and Danny Briere came out of the management booth or whatever, and I should have asked him just jokingly, was he behind that post? Did you have to sign off on that post before they post the side by side of him and Michkov celebrating, like, or whatever, because I'm sure he enjoyed that. Hey, the guy, he wasn't his, when Michkov got here, Danny Briere wasn't Michkov's personal stick boy that day for no reason,
Well, I was
Imagine
gonna
him
say
in
I kind of want to see a picture of Michkov, but with the Danny Briere picture from that day photoshopped onto his face. That little
um,
grin, you know the one I'm talking about.
right. But so he scores the goal, and then like once the celebration kind of gets going or whatever, like he has his celebration after it's over, but like the smile that he gets after the rest of the team kind of starts to surround him. It's kind of like, especially for the way the week started, or where he was a week earlier, getting benched for the first game of two. It's like it's got to be fun.
Yeah, I'm trying really hard to enjoy it because we are less than 20 games into Matvei Michkov's career.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, theoretically, right? We had Erik Johnson play game number 1000 on Saturday. We'll touch on that in a second, but hopefully, theoretically, we get to watch him play that game in 10 years, right? We get to watch him play game number 1000, and we look back at it and go, man, remember when John Tortorella scratched him 3 weeks into his career? And we get to look back at it with fondness and happiness, and hopefully with a
Are
handful of
you
rings.
Are you also
But
are you also saying this with the hopes that he's the third Flyer to play 1,000 games as a Flyer?
I mean, yeah, of course, absolutely.
You know what I mean? Because
Well, maybe
we
fourth, frankly, because I'm pretty sure Sean Couturier is going to get there at this point. But
a-
um,
actually, I disagree with you. He won't even be the third or fourth or whatever it is, because there's enough
it's
guys. There's certain guys with big enough contracts that if they don't go anywhere, like Travis
are.
Konecny's
I was going to
on,
say how many of them are named Travis?
possibly two of them, depending on how you want to look at it. Yeah, sure. Well, funny you say that, because the same night, like Erik Johnson was the one who was getting all the attention because 1,000
Right.
games is 1,000 games, no question about it. But Travis Sanheim the same night was playing in his 515th game, which, by the way, sounds crazy to say.
That is insane. Yeah.
But 515th game, which is 12th all time now among Flyers defensemen, and that'll be a list that he rockets up pretty quickly.
Yeah. So the Flyers don't have the most defensive depth in franchise history.
No kidding.
Travis Sanheim's getting close to making that all-time team. I'm not
By the
saying he's there. I'm not saying he's there,
by the
but he's
by the
getting
way,
close.
by the way, do you want me to make you feel like crazy? Like, I just gave you a
Oh
number of
no.
Sanheim's numbers. You want me to give you? You want me
Joel
to give
Joel Farabee's over 300, isn't he?
that? That's not where I'm going at all.
Okay.
No. Do you want me to tell you who, by the end of this homestand, or close to, two more games he ties, three more? So the Chicago game, this upcoming Saturday, will be the one where he passes. That'll be Travis Konecny's 585th game, which is going to, among Flyers anyway, because this won't be career totals based on the other player I'm going to mention, but among Flyers totals, puts Konechny in the top 25 of games played. And the guy he passes is Wayne Simmons. Does it feel like
Uh,
Travis Konechny has been here for that? Like, it does, but it doesn't,
you
right? Like,
the fact that you just told me that Travis Konecny's been here or will have been here longer than Wayne Simmons was here is oh, that hurts my heart. Respectfully to Travis, I'm sorry. I love you, buddy, but oh, that hurts my heart. Okay.
like just
Meanwhile, Braden Shen's in his early 30s and is a captain for the St. Louis Blues, but whatever. Anyway,
well, how many, like, because they played what, 18 games?
something like that. Yeah.
If Konechny plays the remaining 64, and I don't expect that completely, usually he gets a little bit banged up.
Yeah, let's say he plays 60, round it off, just in case.
That'll be fine. It would still qualify, because even if I'll tell you what, I'll drop the number that I came up with by 6, because it'll put the final total at a nice round number, and he would still have played 76 games this year. Seems valid.
Yeah.
That would put him at 640 career games, and Konechny would be 15th all time in Flyers history
And
already.
that's and like and here's the thing with his current like he's not going anywhere. I assume at this point that like he's not going anywhere. So it's crazy. But okay. Hopefully, like I said, kind of getting back to the topic here. Hopefully, at some day in the future, we are watching Matvei Michkov start to climb these lists and
Right.
get into the top 15 all time games played, and get into the top 5 all time in points for the franchise.
Can I
Stuff
can
like
I
that.
can I bring up something about one of his plays on Saturday, by the way, because I want
Yeah.
to, like the breakaway goal, like so far going through the course of the week, the breakaway goal on Monday is great. You love seeing him have that opportunity. Then he scored in the shootout too, no less. By the way, the goal in the shootout, the goal that he has been looking for who knows how long, because they practice, preseason, you may practice shootouts, you may get into one in like for real anyway, or whatever the case may be.
They did a couple in the
He
preseason.
he kept coming out with, you know what? I don't even know if it was that. I think it was actually when they would have scrimmages. They if the scrimmage ended in
Okay.
a tie, they would go to shootout mode also, right? Even in like training camp.
Well, I know there were a couple of preseason games where like the game didn't end in a tie, but they still did a shootout just to try it.
Yeah, you want to know something funny? Never here.
Really
Like, it
fascinating.
seems like it's a road game thing that the other team puts into place, and the
You
Flyers are
think
like, we're playing a normal game.
that's got to be a Keith Jones decision, right?
Maybe, I don't know. But so anyway, the
That sounds
point,
like a president of hockey ops.
the reason I'm going into that is because Michkov would say afterwards, because we got him at least once during training camp with the translator and all stuff like that. And he would constantly, like, one of the things he would say afterwards is like, he would keep saying, next time I'm going to score, though. Like, that was all his mind was on. If he didn't score, was next time I'm getting him. I'm going to score next time.
Well,
I'm going to
and
score. And
apparently
finally,
he's very competitive.
oh,
Yes.
he definitely is. Well, because
You saw the ping pong story.
yes, absolutely. And well, not only did we see it, but like, and I saw other people actually like
Some
post
people
about
like
it a little bit.
doing some digging, doing some
No, it's
research.
not about no, because I don't think there was that much digging to be done. Because if you've paid any attention
I
to the
know.
stories that go around, it's pretty like, first of all, how much
Everyone knows that
it's
Matvei Michkov and Igor Zamula are best friends.
well, no kidding. Did you see the reaction on Saturday's game? Zamula
Yeah.
scores like probably the flukiest goal you're gonna get. Which, by the way,
I think the commentary team almost gave it to Michkov because of how he reacted when he was just that excited for Zamula.
well, I was gonna look for me. I didn't have any reason to believe it was his because he's standing right in front of me, like right in my sight line,
Oh,
and
you got
he
a good angle on that.
no, and he didn't move. I couldn't believe the thing went in because it seemed like a nothing play. But he's standing there and he made a beeline for Zamula afterwards. Like, good for you, but well, because by that point too, you got to realize at that point he's got 6 goals on the season already. Michkov does. It's
Yeah.
like this is like my best friend on the team who just scored his first, and I'm happy for him or whatever.
So,
Yeah, such a bad teammate, right?
I cannot wait till Matvei Michkov hands the Stanley Cup to Igor Zamula one day. It's going to be so nice.
Well, we'll see. We'll see if
Sorry.
how long
Anyway, that's a long way away.
no, but we'll see how long Zamula's a Flyer before we go that far. But
I don't care if
I know.
Matvei wants him on the team, he's on the team.
Well, anyway, so let's go back to the goals and all that stuff like that. So first of all, he finally gets one in the shootout, which love the move. Love the decision. Like, that's the skill that everybody's been waiting for, the confidence on that situation. He had already scored on a breakaway to begin with. I liked his approach on the breakaway within the game too, because in that one he doesn't try to do too much. I'm just going to go in, keep it low, shoot 5-hole, and it goes in. Love that decision too. And that's the confidence you want to have, like, not to change players completely, but when Konecny gets a breakaway in Ottawa, isn't there an element where I don't care what the shot total says? He's scoring a goal because it's who it is. Let's be real. He knows what he's doing from here, so he's gonna score. You want to feel the same way about Michkov, and truth be told, you already do when he has it on his stick in that spot. You already feel it. Like, what's he gonna do now?
It's I said earlier that we're less than 20 games into his career, and I'm trying really hard to enjoy it because we're gonna blink and the next 10 years of his career is just gonna go like that. But it's nice watching a player, and I've said this kind of since he started on this ice. It's nice watching a player, watching him play, and immediately going, "Oh, he might make a mistake. This shift might not turn out perfectly, but he's the best player on the ice." Period.
I think it's just nice to have a guy with his skill set that makes you think every time something great's gonna happen. Not only that,
That's
but
what I mean. Yeah, I think we're saying the same thing. Yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
well, because like the other part of the equation is that he scored like I said, I don't think he played that great against Ottawa, but he has the moment at the end, and I already know without doing anything else post game yet, he's the story. Like you can be the most casual fan. You can, the radio stations sometimes don't always talk Flyers or whatever. It's getting a mention because he scored the overtime winner. This isn't, for lack of a better player, we'll just go with one we've already mentioned in this conversation. This isn't Igor Zamula scored the overtime winner and everybody's going to go like, okay, cool. It's no, the kid you should be hearing about for the next 10 plus years had a moment as a rookie. This is 15.
Right.
What was he at that time? 15 games into his career?
Something like that. Yeah.
He's at 16 games. It was his 15th career game, and he has the moment that, like,
and it's not just an overtime goal off like a setup pass and a blah blah blah, like
no,
where
it's a
he
skill
ends up
play.
shooting. He creates that play basically all the way down. He he outskates NHL players. He beats an NHL goalie from a tough angle. Like he makes that whole play himself. That is not the beneficiary of a nice pass, etc., etc.
Right,
That
right.
is a superstar goal scorer making a superstar goal scorer's goal.
Right, and that's what you can argue that, like Allmark's got to stop it because you can't leave even
Allmark had an
like,
awful night.
sure he
Allmark
did because he faced
looked
19 shots and
atrocious.
gave up 5.
Yeah, and like I sympathize with him because for a lot of that game, he just wasn't seeing a whole lot of action. I think the Flyers had like 7 or 8 shots through 2 periods. It was pretty tough.
7, I think, but yeah,
Right.
they were outshot through 2 periods, 28-7, which
Right. So I understand how it's hard to stay sharp as a goalie. Man, you probably want at least 2 of those back.
As you alluded to earlier, hat tip to Ivan Fedotov at the other end during that one through 2 periods, who gave you even a remote chance to be in that game.
I know that wasn't his best performance from a statistical perspective, right? That's still probably the Tampa game, but I think that's the game that Ivan Fedotov can look back on and take some comfort. Like he took a ton of shots. He kept the team in the game several times. He showed some resiliency. He like I think for a player who has struggled through the first, half dozen starts of his career, I think that is a game that he can like the Tampa game is where he started to build his confidence, but I think that's a
Right.
game that he can really, really hang his hat on because that was basically a perfect performance out of your backup goalie.
Well, and that's what I don't want to give him the job per se because it's the same thing. He had 3 terrible starts and he had 3 good ones. Like I don't want to just give him the job based off of that, but he's at least John Tortorella, I thought, put it perfectly after Saturday's game where it was he looks the part now.
Absolutely.
He didn't even remotely look the part in the first 3. Now he looks the part a little more. And
that's what I'm saying. He looks like he can be your backup goalie at this point.
He just claims he's tracking it better, I guess. He got scored on in Ottawa, and it's not like it's a goal that you're sitting there like going crazy over, like, oh, he really needs to stop it. It wasn't like that at all. It was a power play goal, one-timer, so like it's a tough save regardless. But I also look and I go, he started to do the I'm trying to look over the top of the screen thing, and he's a little too far back in the net, so he takes his angles away. And I think that's the biggest difference. Why is he winning games that are in shootouts? Like, why did he win?
There's no traffic in front of him.
Well, no, it has nothing to do with okay. I understand that, but I'm saying because he comes out and he makes himself bigger. And all he has to do in that situation is don't make the first move. And that's actually a good tie back to what I was trying to talk about with Michkov about the play he makes on Saturday, because you can't tell me that Devin Levi, who's the goalie for Buffalo in that game, you can't tell me he doesn't know the pass is coming. There's no way. Michkov turned his head to look back at Konecny coming to join that 2-on-0 rush 3 times at least, maybe 4. During the rush, he looks back. He looks back again. He looks back again. He keeps
the shot fake was convincing enough.
And he he does a leg fake. He does like the fake leg kick that he's going to push off and shoot, and then makes the pass. And Levi just bites on it completely, and that opens it up. And it's perfectly.
It wasn't Yeah, absolutely. And it wasn't just the leg fake, right? He did also open up his hands like he was going to shoot and then
Yeah, I
take
know,
the
but I'm
pass.
like,
Like it was a really nice, like I said, a goal scorer's move, honestly. And I know he didn't score. Obviously, it was a setup,
I
but
was I was waiting for Konecny to get it back to him.
I listen. I know.
Which is why I appreciate just go in and finish
Just
it.
shoot the puck. Yep. And well, and I think that has to be part of it. You know, we talked after watching Matvei Michkov play in the preseason. We talked about the fact that he is already thinking the game at such a high level and creating space, and he's so creative that his teammates were going to have to catch up to him. And I think part of that process is Travis Konecny just ripping the puck. Just the Flyers of old would pass it around and this, that, the other, and look for the perfect opportunity. And I think there has been some focus on if he gets you the puck, just shoot it.
Well, sure, probably. I mean, like,
And it's the sort of thing that when you put two good players together, because those are, you know, not only is that a 2-on-0, that's probably your best two forwards on the 2-on-0. And you expect a goal there. Like if you're going to be a good team and your best two forwards are 2
but
on 0,
if you
the
get a
puck ends
2
up in
oh
the net,
anywhere, if
period.
you get yeah, you
Right.
get a 2 anywhere, you better score.
Right.
Absolutely.
The puck ends up in the back of the net, period. That's why they're your best two players. Um, but it's nice to see the machine as a whole coming together. I think people are playing with him a little better. He is playing in the systems a little better. I think it's all coming together. And I know I mentioned it and I did say it as kind of a joke that John Tortorella is pushing all the right buttons, but I do think he has done a good job of kind of shuffling things around and figuring out what works. And again, I think you take him out of the lineup for 2 games, and then he comes out and has 5 points in 3 games. And I think John Tortorella deserves a little bit of kind of acknowledgement for that.
Well, and here's the thing too. So Monday when they're playing San Jose, as much as that game started off really good, he's already scored on the breakaway at this point. It was a 3-0 game. This is about the time when San Jose starts to push back into the game and get it to a 1-goal game going to the third. So it's late second period. And Michkov overstayed a shift. Stays on the ice for too long. At one point in time, somebody yelled for him and he didn't come to the bench either. And he's still out there as they're getting ready to they get a whistle to put a halt to play. And I think they had actually gotten scored on right, like because the next goal that San Jose scored was right off of a face-off. It was almost a play off the face-off. So he's not on the ice for it. But Tortorella turns and it like away from where the play is at the moment, like the opposite end, probably going to at that given point in time because the forwards are going towards where the side of the ice where I sit, so it's the opposite side. So I'm guessing that's where Rocky Thompson is because he's gonna now Tortorella is gonna do like communicate this with an assistant of some kind, and you see him turn and kind of go like this, like explaining something, and I knew exactly who it was about. And I knew exactly what it was about. And Michkov wasn't on the bench for 2 seconds before Tortorella was over his shoulder. Gave him a talking to, really hammered home the point, slapped him on the shoulder pads, and that was the end of it. You know, like gave him that tap, like just to teach again, and it didn't change anything. He didn't get benched for any further play or anything
Well,
like that.
well, and it is worth noting, just kind of while we're in this conversation here, we did get a little bit of information as to why Michkov was scratched last week. It seems as though there was, I don't want to call it an incident, but there was something that happened on the bench that maybe there was a miscommunication, maybe there was a misunderstanding about coach versus player we don't know the details of it, and that's fine. Something happened where the coaching staff felt the need. They felt that Michkov needed a little bit of a lesson, a little bit of a break, and that was at least a factor into why he ended up sitting out.
Sure, and it's like and it's not here or there because he's played so well anyway.
Right.
Otherwise, especially production wise, like you're
And
talking.
I'm not trying to make a thing out of it. I don't think there's a rift. I don't, you know, I'm certainly not trying to create anything. But we did get a little bit of context, and it seems as though it was a bit of a corrective scratching.
Right, and I see. I think that they also teed it up the whole way. Like they're telling you it's probably happening at some point, and it got to that point right then and there. I think that's what it comes down to.
And we said that on the show.
I don't think this was a case where he's a problem and it was we're doing this because he's a problem. I think it was just we've got to get it through his head about certain things about the game, and part of that's going to be you might have to sit down.
Right. And it wasn't necessarily punitive, right? Like, he wasn't being punished, but
right.
he just needed a little bit of a different perspective.
Well, but bottom line is I'm not going to argue with somebody who, as a rookie at 19 years old, no less, has 6 goals and 15 points on the season. The 15 points are the most of any rookie. The 6 goals are most of any rookie so far. It's what we talked about. Like, it wouldn't be crazy at all from, like, I don't think anyway. And I'm not looking at, one thing I will admit is I am not looking at goalies here when I do this. So maybe there's a goalie who enters the conversation, but if I'm looking at just players individually, the Calder is a two-man race. Who stays more consistent, Michkov or Stankoven?
Well, and rightly or wrongly, does Stankoven lose some credibility with voters because he played so many playoff games? Well, because of the level of team and because he played so many playoff games last year, like there's that little bit of, well, he's not a real rookie. And he qualifies. I'm not, but there is that little bit of, well, he played like 40 or 50 NHL caliber games last year. Like, it's kind of hard to call that guy a rookie.
Like Michkov's playing almost 2 more minutes of ice time than Stankoven is per game, taking at least 1 more shift per game, and then wait until you
definitely different roles.
wait until you hear this one, because this is a remarkable number that I haven't seen yet, because like it doesn't qualify under the immediate ones or whatever. Do you know what Michkov's shooting percentage is this year?
It's gotta be good.
Oh, it's very good. To compare it to Stankoven, it's outstanding.
Okay, what is it?
It's 20.7%. Stankoven's shooting percent. Stankoven has taken 49 shots this season in the same number of games. He might be, but like what I'm saying is that that's an 8.2%, shooting percentage, and Michkov has only taken 29 shots but has 6 goals.
Well, a Dallas Stars fan will tell you that both of those things are likely to regress, right? Michkov's is likely to come down. Stankoven's probably likely to come up at least a little. You know.
No, but if I were to tell you, among the guys who actually have played some legitimate time, you know what I mean? Like, if I'm picking guys with, let's just do it this way. I'll find me people who have at least 25 shots, because Michkov has 29. So I'll go 25, because even then, like, and maybe I can include this guy because he's a known goal scorer, but Braden Point has the best one of like a regular player who doesn't have like 1 game or whatever. His shooting percentage is 38.1 because he's got 8 goals on 21 shots, which is absurd. Now he's missed some time with an injury, so I understand that.
And that one's not going to stick. Like, you can't shoot 38% for a full year. You just can't.
No, I got you. But like, as I start to go down the list, like, there's not many other people who I see who are in the range. Like if you want to put 3 other people right off the bat that have plus 20% shooting percentages and have actually taken a good number of shots, you're into the territory of Draisaitl, Reinhart, Caulfield. Like this, a lot of these guys are before you get Michkov on the on even the stat sheet or whatever. But there's a lot of names on here that I could say the same exact thing about that you're talking about, where it's like, oh, well, that'll regress at some point. Yeah, and so will Connor McMichael shooting 26.1%, because
that whole Washington Capitals team is an anomaly. They're weird right now.
Or Stefan Nason shooting 25.7%. Like, eventually that'll come down. I just like his, like, one of the things I like also looking at is just it's fun to have a guy like this who's basically point per game. 6 goals, 15 points in 16 games.
Well, and other than that little 3-game low, he's kind of significantly over point per game. If you take out the little,
like you want to know something I looked at the other day, just because just because it made not because it made sense, but my curiosity got the best of me a little bit with this because I don't remember a rookie having this much hype since Nolan Patrick got drafted, basically. Like that was the last time we really got hyped up about a rookie, like in every sense, right? And I couldn't help but think about like how that was a guy who you thought had the potential to have like a really big point production kind of thing, and it never really amounted or whatever. First, I'm going to give you what his rookie totals were, and then I'm going to give you what his career totals were as a Flyer.
So sad.
It
The
is,
Nolan Patrick effect
and
is
I'm not trying, and I'm not trying to do this to bury him because it's like,
it's not
it,
his fault, right? It's
no,
it's
no,
it's medical conditions
it's
beyond his control.
it's just to take a guy who everybody was really excited about that was supposed to be among that next group, and now you've got a guy who is doing what you thought you were going to get from a point production standpoint. So
Right.
in his rookie year, Nolan Patrick played 73 games, which actually is a really good possible number for what Michkov's going to play.
Right. Fair
Very
enough.
distinctly possible that he plays 73 as well and misses 9 games. Not out of the question for
Right.
whatever reason, right?
Let me see if I can remember this. Going to his rookie year, he was in, was it like 38?
Lower, but not too
It was
far
low.
off.
It was okay. Okay. Go ahead.
He had
Close enough for me. It's
30 points even
30 points. Okay.
and 13 goals.
Okay.
Michkov, that's 73 games again, right? Michkov's in 15 games halfway there in points.
Michkov will do that by Four Nations face off.
I think you're crazy for saying that. I think he has
30 points by
I think he
Four
has
Nations face off.
that's February. I think he has 30 by Christmas.
I mean, listen, I was trying not to be too. Listen, I am Mr. Orange tinted shades on this show. I'm trying to show some restraint. No, I absolutely agree that I think 30 by Christmas is a distinct possibility. Like I said, I was just trying to pump the brakes a little bit.
Only because also it's the volume of games they're playing right now is just, I mean, like,
well, and I think then his gas tank becomes not an issue, but it becomes the question, right? We start talking about the KHL schedule and the fact that he's only played 50 or so games before. Does he at some point in December or, over the next 6 weeks between now and Christmas, does he get scratched for a game or two for gas tank purposes?
I don't know. I see because it depends on how you want to talk about how he took everything to begin with. If that's all the motivation he needs to play a different way, he may never come back out of the lineup. Like maybe this is a one and done because he just takes it the right way. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's not. Like if I had to guess, it's not. Like, and it doesn't mean he's not taking it the right way.
Not the last time he comes out of the lineup?
Because I think inevitably at some point when you play his style right now, and there's not necessarily a defensive element to it, something will happen that gets on John Tortorella's nerves, and this will surface again because, like, do you want to tolerate the defensive mistakes or like no? Hear me out. Are you going to tolerate any defensive mistakes, overstaying your shift, doing something that doesn't necessarily work? If you're putting up points, I think you can. He goes out and scores on a breakaway and then has a shift where he stays too long on the ice. You talk to him, but you're not taking him off the ice because he's got 2 points already in the game. How do I sit him down?
He's 3/4 of your offense so far, right?
But when it's the St. Louis game and he makes a mistake early and you're in a tie game and he hasn't done anything to earn merit whatsoever in that game, do you make an example then? Yeah, maybe, because he hasn't done anything yet. It was him having that shift that lasts too long. It's too late in the game to sit there and say, well, he hasn't done anything else, so now I got to make an example. Like he's having a really bad game. No, can't do it. He's already having a good game.
Let's say John Tortorella makes it through next year and gets let go of his position at the end of next year, and he's Matvei Michkov's coach for the first 2 years of Michkov's career.
Okay.
John Tortorella is a really good defensive coach. Always has been. Whether he is going to be the coach of this team for the next 10 years in Michkov's whole career or not, I think it is good that Michkov is getting exposed to this early on, hopefully instilling some good. if you learn how to play NHL hockey under John Tortorella, you're going to learn good, valuable lessons that serve you for the rest of your career. And again, I am not saying that this kid is going to end up being Mark Stone, right? He's not. But Alexander Ovechkin didn't play defense. And then 5 or 6 years into his career, he started to play a little bit of defense. He still doesn't play very much, but he started to play a little bit of defense. And if we can get Matvei Michkov to follow a similar curve, Alexander Ovechkin was the best player in the world for 3 or 4 years there, especially while Sid was having his head issues.
I hear you. And
I think we're setting good examples, even if they don't stick forever. We're setting a good baseline for the kid for his career.
So I want to bring something else up really quick about this to finish the point, and then we should move on to the other players we want to talk about so we can put a wrap.
Absolutely,
on the
we have a couple more players we're focusing on here today, for sure.
So I already gave you that. So Nolan Patrick's rookie season was 13 goals, 30 points in 73 games, which seems very realistic. Obviously, seems very realistic for Michkov. I mean, we're 15
incredibly
games
achievable,
right? So I get it. If I gave you the numbers of Nolan Patrick's entire Flyers career, which doesn't include the little amount of time he played in Vegas after the trade, would you? And I'm just saying, would you tell me I'm crazy if I said this was the final totals for Michkov this year?
This season?
Yeah.
Is it? Wait, it's. Let me see if I can guess here. I was pretty close on the rookie numbers. Did he end up around 65 points?
You're in the right ballpark.
Nolan Patrick did. Okay.
In his Flyers career, yes.
Right.
You're in the right ballpark.
Okay.
So it just happens to work out this way because they're nice round numbers. Is it impossible to say 30 goals, 70 points?
And I would like the record to reflect, if you are listening on an audio source and not watching on our YouTube channel, that was Kevin who said that. That was not orange tinted glasses. Every Flyer's the greatest player in the NHL. Me over here. Kevin just predicted a 30-goal rookie season for Matvei Michkov.
No. I didn't predict it. I'm saying, would it be surprising?
I mean, a little bit.
Here's why I'd say no. I'd say no because there's plenty of people who looked at when he got sat down for 2 games and go, well, if anybody else on the team could finish, he'd have 5 more points.
I think that's fair, but I don't know. So I think 70 is reasonable. 30 goals might be a little precocious. You know, I could see him settling in the mid to upper 20s.
And I'm with you because if you remember from the beginning of the year, what did I say? I think I said something about 60 is doable. That was what I was thinking, and I think that I kept myself around 20 to 25 goals because I didn't want to make him out to be a goal scorer. I thought he was going to be more of the setup guy.
Exactly, and I think he will.
And he has been. Yes. 6 goals, 9 assists. It's Leslie. If he wants to be the guy who goes and scores the goals, then he's not passing the puck to Konecny on a breakaway or in a 2-on-0. He's not doing it. You know,
and some of that will come, right? Like he is still presumably transitioning to the NHL ice and kind of figuring out your angles and a little bit.
And that's why I say, is 30-70 doable?
You think 30 could be still be possible? Okay.
Well, I say it. The reason I say it's possible is because I sit there and I look and I go, well, if he only gets better as the year goes on, and he's like he's having.
But what if he doesn't only get better? What if he runs out of gas in February because he hasn't played this many? Right. Or even once the NHL gets a little bit of a book on him, right? Like you see guys come in all the time and they're great for their first 10 or 20 games.
And
then once teams have a chance to adjust, it changes things.
And that's why at the beginning of the year, I didn't want to put numbers on anything because to me, I sit there and I go 60 would be nice. I don't think I'm going crazy there in saying that because he's supposed to have offensive skill. And certainly at this point, at this rate, I'd be a little disappointed if he didn't make 60 points when you've got 15 in less than a quarter of the year. Absolutely.
I was just going to say, I think 60 is still a good number. I would not be sad with 60, but I'm getting to the point with his performance so far, 50 would be a disappointment.
Yeah.
Right. Like if he stalls out and only ends up at 50 or in the low 50s, mid 50s, something like that, that is a little bit of a bummer.
based on the way I'm seeing it, he should be at 25 by game 34 at worst. You know what I mean? Like at the rate he's doing things, he should be at 25 points. We're talking 10 points. I'm giving him near 20 games to get 10 points. Be a half a point per game player for the next 20 to get yourself halfway to 50. I think that should be it. And because of the way that I'm framing that, anything less puts you at a pace to do more. You know,
and I gotta say,
what if he does 10 and 15?
Right. Well, and just kind of casually looking over the next 6 weeks or so, just kind of not looking super far ahead. You got Columbus a couple times, you got Detroit a couple times, you got San Jose again, you got Chicago this Saturday.
That's the one I would look at. Yep. Like
over that next 15, 20 games, kind of that time frame you're talking about, you have 5 or 6 nice little matchups in there where theoretically he's got a chance to do some real damage. Obviously, he has proved that he can produce against any team, but there's some teams in there that hopefully he can really prey on. So, okay, we're gonna continue talking about Matvei Michkov as we move forward throughout our shows, but we should touch on a couple other Flyers that are having really excellent seasons so far. Yeah, yeah. So we've talked about them all show. We've talked about Matvei Michkov, but I have always said the phrase, but Travis Konecny is your best forward, because Michkov will get there. He's got the skill. He's got the talent. Within the next 2 years or so, he will very likely just be far and away your best forward. But as it sits right now, as far as the NHL goes, Travis Konecny is your established name, and he has earned every ounce of that so far this year. He is more than point per game, 11 goals, 22 points in 18 games. I mean, at this point, if the Flyers only send one rep to the All-Star game, it's probably Michkov. Let's be honest.
There isn't one this year.
Oh, right. There's not, because of Four Nations. Okay. We'll talk about Four Nations in a second.
Well, I had the same thought though, because I'm like, that's a tough call. Like at one point in time, I actually wondered, would they send 2 because you want to have the kid there, but Konechny's deserving of it.
I think so. Obviously, we talked about there is not an All-Star game because of the Four Nations tournament. I think you would send Michkov, but then I think Konechny's got a really good chance to win like a fan vote type situation.
What's really interesting to me about Konechny, and this is a Four Nations tie instead, because this conversation probably could come up all the time. I don't like, given the way that Team Canada is for things like this, I don't even know, like I could go and find where Konechny ranks in goals and points this season among the rest of the league in general. And it's going to probably be in a place that's higher than the number I'm about to give. And I'm eliminating everybody. Like, think about it. I'm eliminating your Ovechkins and your Austin Matthews, for example, who play for other countries to begin with. I'm just talking Canadian players at this point. I don't know if Travis Konecny is like, he's probably in the range, like barely inside of the top 20 of forwards for Canadian forwards, right? Because there's so many names you're going to put above him, regardless of like on reputation,
name value more than anything, right?
Exactly. But if I read off to you, Travis Konecny is tied for 14th in the league in points.
I believe you.
Hey, you want to know what other names are like right there, or that he's doing better than right now?
Okay.
Travis Konecny has more points, or has the same number of points as Jack Hughes. He has 1 more point than Connor McDavid and Anze Kopitar. He's got 2 more points than Alex Ovechkin. He's got 3 more points than Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin.
Every name you've mentioned, by the way, up until Malkin, is going to be on an Olympic team in 2 years.
I think even Malkin might be at that point.
That's the whole Russian aspect. That's not anything about Malkin.
Want me to keep going with the Canadian name value?
Yeah, go for it.
He's got 5 more points than John Tavares.
Yep.
Guys who end up on Team Canada for these.
I don't know if Tavares is making that team, but I get it. But I get it.
I know where you're coming from with the likes of Marner and like that or whatever. I think Marner has more points though, doesn't he? Yeah, Marner has 2 more points. So that's why.
Right. Well, and also is Mitch Marner. Let's be honest.
No, I hear you, but even to sit there and say he's 1 point behind Artemi Panarin, 2 behind Marner, 2 behind Draisaitl, 3 behind Rantanen, like there's not many guys. Like there's only 2 guys who really blow away 22 points and are already into the 30s. And the rest are in a range where it's like, and some of them like you also kind of have to be realistic about, like Sam Reinhart's got 28 points. Okay, you play alongside Matthew Tkachuk and Alexander Barkov and Sam Bennett and you know what I mean? You name
Yeah,
it.
but in Four Nations, you're going to get to play alongside Sidney Crosby and
Oh
Nate
no,
McKinnon, and
no. I'm doing it from the I'm talking
like
about
your quality of teammate doesn't get worse.
No. I'm talking about it from the NHL perspective. I'm saying
Okay.
that makes 22 points for Konecny look better. You don't have the roster that Florida has. You don't have the roster that Colorado has. You know, but Draisaitl have him. You don't get to play with Connor McDavid every night where there's points to be had. You know what I mean?
Hot take: Travis Konecny won't make Team Canada until Brad Marchand's gone because he fills kind of that same role.
It's not a bad idea, honestly. Okay, so now let's do the 11 goals because the 11 goals are tied for 7th in the league.
Well, and how many of those guys can you have on your roster in an IIHF setting, right? Like in the NHL, you can have 2 or 3 of them, but in the IIHF, you probably can only have one of those guys.
So, by the way, the 11 goals are tied with Kucherov and Kaprizov, 1 behind Caulfield, Nylander, and Rantanen, only 2 goals behind the 2 guys tied for the league leading goals, Reinhart and Draisaitl. That's the difference. It's 2 guys with 13, 4 guys with 12, and Konechny's in the mix with the rest of the guys with 11.
Something I will say, just listening to you rattle off all those names, if Russia does send athletes in 2024, or I'm sorry, in 2026, who does Michkov play with? Oh, is he on Kucherov's other wing?
Oh,
Come
man.
Come on, man. Is he on Kaprizov's other wing?
No.
Come on, man. It's gonna be fun. Okay, sorry. That thought just occurred to me. Like
but you get my but do you get my point about this? Like Konechny feels like this guy who doesn't belong in this group, you know, and maybe that's just us watching him for so long. Partially,
yeah, see,
but
I think that's
the more that
he has been your best player for like the last couple of years.
But what I'm saying is that he doesn't come across as one of the league's best goal, like he doesn't come across as one of the league's best goal scorers when it comes down to it because he barely breaks 30 most years. What pace is he on right now?
Don't know. 11 and 18. That's over 40. That's 45.
I was gonna say, generally speaking, he's on pace for a 40 goal season right now.
Yeah. Since Hedge did a little quick math on your graphic on the screen, and I went, wait a minute, we're less than a quarter of the way through the season, and he's already got 11.
I picked up on it as like part of this was going on where it's like score on the breakaway in Ottawa, score a power play goal against San Jose. And you know, next thing, like the start of the week, it was here's 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, like getting on a heater has turned into like you're far and away the leading goal scorer on this team.
Oh yeah.
Like they announced his first one in like which was the 2-1-0 goal against Buffalo, and it's like, yeah, by the way, he's already at 10 this year, and it's game 18.
Double digits in mid-November. It's not bad.
You know, and listen, he's one of the guys that last year the gas tank ran low at some point. Because the style he plays, it's tough to do for 82. I get it. But
respectfully, I kind of hope he doesn't make Four Nations just so we can take that week off.
Well, it's going to be great for him.
Respectfully.
Well, then, look, we've hinted at stuff about Konechny for long enough that I think we can move on to the next player because Four Nations comes up there, and he's another guy that,
frankly, I think I think the next guy we're about to talk about, Travis Sanheim, if you're watching on our YouTube channel here, is much closer to the Team Canada roster than Travis Konecny is.
It doesn't hurt when your head coach, who's
actively calls it out.
Well, the most veteran coach in the league that has say around hockey circles, just because people will listen.
Yeah, but he's American though, so he's probably lying.
I mean,
if you missed it listening to this show, John Tortorella after Saturday's game said something along the lines
He said,
of,
"I hope." His exact quote was, "I hope Hockey Canada's watching."
right, in terms of Travis Sanheim and how good he's looked recently, and the implication certainly seems to be that John Tortorella thinks Travis Konecny deserves, or
I
Travis Sanheim deserves a spot on the Four Nations
I
roster.
said on Flyers Files for 97.3 this week, and I'll say it here too, so it's consistent because and it would have stayed consistent either way. We've been doing over, like I said, over at 97.3. I've been doing the 3 stars after every game. It's one of the segments on their main show on the Sports Bash. Every the day after every game, they read off who I picked as the 3 stars. We've done this for like 5 games now. I want to say something like that. I think the first one was the Carolina game or something.
Travis Sanheim's been there at least 3 times.
Easily, maybe 4 at this point. Like if I've done it 6 games, I think he might have been in there 4 times.
I mean, yeah.
I
How
mean,
can you not?
like, let's put it this way. I have an easy way to check because it will eventually it'll be I sent like there might be graphic form of this, but I have the list. So the first game the first game I did this for was after Carolina, and it was Konecny, Tippett, Couturier. Sanheim was one of my 3 after the Tampa game. Sanheim was one of my 3 in the Ottawa game, and now he's been one of my 3. Spoiler alert, because this one hasn't been read off yet, but he's one of my 3 from the Buffalo game as well.
Oh, enough.
So yeah, it's like the 3rd time, and I'm sure that one of the others in here, like I picked somebody else, and I could have picked him. Like just think generally speaking, like I'm sure that he probably had a decent enough game against Florida that I could have put him in there, or against San Jose that I could have put him in there. I put in picking a defenseman against San Jose, I picked Emil Andre instead for that one. But the last 2 games I've had no choice but to put him in here. And one of the main reasons I've put Sanheim in there a couple times is the ice time. He's playing upwards of 30. Let's have, boy, the NHL stats are getting a workout today. But I don't mind. Because I looked this up last night after the game too. Travis Sanheim's average ice time per game this season is 25 minutes, 17 seconds. And that's only gotten higher over the last 5 games, roughly, right? Like the last 5 games, he's pushed 30 every game. No question.
Wow, they've all gone in overtime.
Do you have? Well, and sure it does, but even then, like, Saturday's game didn't go overtime, and he still played. And he still played in that one. Give me one moment. 27 minutes, 39 seconds in a game that started to look like he was not going to play as much because they were actually able to curb it for a little while.
It looked like he was only going to have to play 4 minutes in the 3rd period.
But okay, so I want you to. Do you want to? I guess I'll start this with because we'll play guessing game. I'll start it with this question, then I'll ask a follow-up once I tell you what it is. But do you want to guess where that ranks in the league? 25 minutes, 17 seconds per game. Where does that rank in the league? What was that?
Top 5.
It's 5th.
Okay. Perfectly top 5. Got it.
Okay. Do you have any guesses for the players that would be above him? The 4 guys that would be above him? Because he's in it.
Has Drew Doughty been healthy this year? Because Drew Doughty's always up there.
Drew Doughty hasn't played.
Okay.
Drew Doughty had because he had the preseason ankle injury. It was he fractured his ankle. I think it was something like that.
Is one of them Quinn Hughes?
So this is where this is going to be fun. Quinn Hughes is averaging 25 minutes even, which is a tie for 7th.
A little bit less. Okay.
But Sanheim is slightly above Quinn Hughes.
Above Travis Sanheim.
Great place to start because that's the kind of names that's the kind of names I want to highlight here.
Yep. Is that Morgan Riley up there? He's playing a ton this year, isn't he?
No,
maybe not.
Morgan Riley's not even in the top 25.
Oh wow! Okay.
If you can believe that. I have to go. Actually,
Niskanen?
That's a better guess.
Okay, yeah, it's a better guy. I'm trying to get back into this.
Heiskanen's averaging 24 minutes 30 seconds per game.
Okay,
So
so at least he's there.
no, but that's a more significant one because saying okay, Quinn Hughes, he's averaging 17 seconds more. All right, whatever. This is 40. That's 45 seconds more.
Right, that's more than a shift. That's a significant difference, right?
Actually, do you want to hear a crazy one? Then that I'm not going to make you guess, but this is just for quantification here. Travis Sanheim's averaging 31.4 shifts per game, and Heiskanen's averaging 25.9.
Okay, so Sanheim's really working.
Okay. I mean, just means shorter shifts for the average, but still.
Fair. Okay, who else is up there? Give me some names.
By the way, the name that's directly behind Heiskanen, for context, is Cale Makar. Behind Heiskanen, not directly behind Sanheim.
Right.
Behind Heiskanen. The four guys that are in front of Sanheim are Mikhail Sergachev is fourth at 25.31 per game, which is
makes sense.
But that's a little bit more of a surprising one because he was normally kind of in the shadow of Hedman for a while.
Yeah, but then he went to Utah, and now he's
and I get why he's there now. And by the way, he's actually averaging 32.1 shifts per game, which is how you get to that number. So he's the only guy on the list in the top 5 that's above Sanheim in shifts per game. And now I'm going to give you 3 names that you would totally expect to be there, though, that we've said multiple times. Third is Roman Josi at 25.32 per game. Second is Zach Werenski at 25.40 per game. And first is Seth Jones at 25.43 per game. But we are talking, if Sanheim played at the same clip that he's been at right now and averaged like 2 minutes above his average ice time to begin with, he's only 30 seconds basically off of the top spot.
I do want to say, I know I mentioned kind of Torts doing all the right things earlier, and I want to give him credit on this as well, because who are 2 of those other names you just mentioned right at the top? Seth Jones and Zach Werenski?
Yeah.
What do both those guys credit a lot of their career to?
Yeah, I hear you there. And
what John Tortorella did with those men in Columbus.
And that's not even the names that stand out to me on the list as much.
No, that's fair. I agree, but I saw those because of the Tortorella connection.
To me, the guy that stands out that I'm putting in the same sentence as Sanheim in terms of ice time and holding his own is to sit there and say with Roman Josi.
So one thing I do want to say is I mentioned a little bit earlier in the show that sometimes guys at 24, 25, 26 find another gear and step it up and I was talking about it in kind of the Anthony Richard quad A to NHL player jump, but there is also that jump from good NHL player to very good NHL player. That can also happen in a similar time frame. Go ahead.
By the way, for a very brief period on Saturday, because Sanheim scored first, like not the first goal, but he scored first in the game with the other player I'm going to mention. But for a very brief moment, I don't know if you realize this, because that goal by Sanheim, by the way, was his 5th of the season already.
Yep.
Which I'll have to pull up his career numbers, by the way, because I want to see how close he would be to a career high in goals, because feels like he's on that kind of track. But that's not the exercise I'm doing here. For a very brief period, Travis Sanheim was alone in second place among defensemen with goals scored until Rasmus Dahlin scored in the game as well.
But what I'm saying is you will sometimes see that player kind of take that next step in their mid-20s. And I think we saw the preliminary aspects of it last year, right? Because Travis Sanheim started really hot, right? And that's why I'm kind of trying to pump the brakes a little bit on this, because through the first 20 games last year, he had like a bunch of points, and he was also matching Roman Josi in a bunch of stats and all this stuff. And it kind of fell off a cliff a little bit. And this year, it feels a little bit more sustainable. It feels a little bit more defensively driven, right? Last year, it felt like a lot of it was based on what he was doing offensively.
Right.
It feels a little more stable this year. I think the defensive situation is a little different around him, obviously. But
it all stems from York going out, really.
I agree. But if Travis Sanheim can maintain this level, what we've seen through this first 20 games, he's got potential to kind of take his game to that next level and maybe get into the conversation of being a number one defenseman.
There are two things I want to bring up about this that I've said for a while about this, or that I've said. One's a more general statement that I made that's going to factor in, like Sanheim totally factors into at this point. And then the other one is something that I've talked about for a while, is directly related to Sanheim. So the more general statement is, what did we say about this season? You need guys who I feel like become irreplaceable parts of your roster going forward. And Sanheim's got some security for the other thing I'm going to bring up in a second, but he feels like he's becoming like when you think about it, if you look at, like, we've said this about, like, Jamie Drysdale need to have a big season to kind of establish his place. Like, he needs to be one of those guys moving forward. And, like, right now that's not part of the equation because he's out with an injury, and I get that. But isn't that what Nick Seeler did? Nick Seeler went from throwaway piece to what would they do without him? I'm starting to feel, I was starting to feel that way about Cam York, and I'm feeling that way about Travis Sanheim. Like, these, you put those two together, York and Sanheim again. I don't even know if maybe you don't even want to after this. Maybe at this point you want Sanheim to continue trudging around with insert player here, a Rasmus Ristolainen type or a Seeler type or something.
Well, and once York and Drysdale come back, you're going to have to make a decision on Emil Andre. Like,
tentatively right now, because
when he comes back too.
Well, he left with an injury on Saturday. We're going to find out later what the deal is.
And he's okay, right?
Right, but
regardless, it's a good problem to have.
Right. All of a sudden, they went from, like, who are the 6 guys going to be, to having, like, 7 guys, 8 guys that you feel like you can have a conversation about, and that's a big deal.
We came into the season going, well, it kind of looks like they have 4 number 3s and then 3 or 4 number 7s. And as the season has progressed, obviously Travis Sanheim, again, I think has shown potential to maybe look like a number 1, but at least looks like a really solid number 2 at this point. Jamie Drysdale has shown some good things, but has also struggled. Cam York has taken some steps. Like, there has definitely been some movement on what we thought this defensive core was, even just through the first 20 games.
Yeah, and, like, I still focus on those other 2 more than anything, but the individual aspect of Sanheim I wanted to bring up is that I've long said, and I know people focus in on him as an individual and focus on this because it's going to be the highest number across the board. The term of the contract and the money of the contract is the highest among a defenseman on the team right now. So he gets a lot of the attention for having he's
your de facto number 1.
Right. Well, not even just that he's the de facto number 1. It's that, well, he makes the most money of any defenseman. So if they could get themselves,
that's what I mean. Yeah.
Well, no, so it has nothing to do with what role he plays. It was more of a, well, if they could get themselves out from underneath of that contract, then they'd have some money, whatever. That's not your problem. He's paid like a second pairing defenseman, a good second pairing defenseman, and he's playing 25 minutes a night on average. I'm not worried about that. I think the contract's good.
I agree.
For what it is. Like, it's also why you can't argue with Travis Konecny's contract either for what you get. It's not about that. I understand moving forward that you don't want to be strapped to $8 million a year for this guy or $6 million a year for this guy. I understand that part of it, but these are the guys that are actually kind of earning it.
You pay somebody, right? Like, it doesn't do you any good if they're making less than $1 million if they can't play hockey.
If I put Travis Konecny among forwards, if I put Travis Konecny next to Joel Farabee and said, who's earning the money?
Travis Konecny's earning the money.
Am I worried about Konechny's contract when I'm getting 11 goals, 22 points in 18 games? Not at all. Am I worried about $5 million a year for Joel Farabee when it's like a little bit of a struggle still? Yeah.
Your highest paid forward is supposed to have the most amount of points. It's that simple, right? When you're building your team, like, it's that simple.
And sometimes you get a guy on an entry level contract who's that good.
Well, and that's why something that you and I have talked about for 18 months since the draft of Matvei Michkov was that when he eventually gets here, you got to maximize those 3 years he's making less than $1 million. But
no, there's potential for that to happen, by the way. I don't know if you caught some of, like, what was being discussed among, I think it was the Hockey Night in Canada type thing where they do kind of a mini 32 thoughts in that to a degree as well. They usually do during.
Didn't actually see this.
Well, there was some stuff online about Friedman talking about how revenues are so good around the league right now that originally the increase was going to be to 92 million for the cap. And they're floating like the idea that if the revenues hold and things are looking really good, you could be looking at 95. At minimum, like the range that he gave was 95 to 97.
Well, and I know that within the next couple of years, the cap is expected to really kind of explode, right? There's
Like,
the players are done paying back the COVID money, and the TV money's
they're
finally in, and like all of this
they're
stuff is
saying
kind of moving towards it.
they're saying things are looking so good at the beginning of this season that kind of a why wait on it kind of move if it's looking that good already, and just up it even further if that's what holds. And
Man, it turns out putting hockey on ESPN and TNT and giving Amazon access to your behind the scenes locker room, turns out that stuff actually helps grow the game. Crazy.
right, so
But
here's
yeah,
Elliot Friedman's thing, because it says Saturday headlines, which they do on Hockey Night in
every
Canada.
Saturday. Yep.
Yep, 25-26 salary cap is scheduled to be approximately 92.5 million, but there are going to be conversations about taking it higher. And I'm trying to see if there was
Give
any
an exact
further,
number.
like if there was anything further on it. Well, there's a link to it, which is going to be I think it's just going to be the video, so I'm not going to try to pull it up now. But I saw some stuff about it. Let me see if I can't do a search for salary cap where somebody else had it, because it's a big deal. It's a very big deal. Okay, here it was. Friedman reporting on the broadcast that the next year's salary cap could actually be pushed well over the 5% growth limit, up to as much as 95 to 97 million. Right now, it's set to go to 92.4 million, but with revenues high, it makes sense to bump it higher. That has to be negotiated between the NHL and NHLPA.
Well, and we've talked about the fact that the Flyers have a decent chunk of money coming off the books after this year, another little chunk coming off after next year, and
Yeah,
that's
by
sort
the
of
way,
most of their contractual
that's a
kind of
nice
tie up.
it's not a big money thing, but it's a nice segue to the next player we wanted to touch on really quick, because he's one of the guys who would be on a 1-year deal.
And that is Erik Johnson. He did play his 1,000th career game on Saturday. He or the team, someone announced that they will be doing the ceremony on Monday before the game against the Colorado Avalanche, which is a nice little touch because Erik
Which
Johnson had
only
a
makes
large chunk of his career there.
Well, somebody, like, there was a conversation kind of being had about, I think it was on the broadcast that, like, Bush was saying it a little bit or something like that, that Colorado does not have a game. Like, I think they played Friday and that was it, right? So, like, Colorado did not play Saturday, and doesn't play Sunday either. So you have, like, they have the opportunity, if Colorado flew out, got into town ahead of Monday, like, that, like, it would be distinctly possible for, like, Erik Johnson to arrange a dinner of some kind or something,
I
like
assume he
with an old
probably
teammate
is. Yeah.
after something like this. I mean, there was a picture that was posted afterwards where Johnson's posing, he's doing the puck photo, but he has one individually, and then he has one with a bunch of teammates. They all have, like, the 1,000 game shirts on. This looks like it was done well after people would have started leaving, potentially, things like this. So, like, it's well beyond my scope of work. Because
Okay.
it was like you got guys who put the t-shirt back on over top of, like, their suits practically for this picture. There's 12 guys in the picture. In case you didn't know how well liked Erik Johnson is in the room,
Not their
like
teammate right there. Yeah.
we're talking a guy who at that stage of the night has that many people in the picture afterwards, and we're talking about guys of all different experience levels, all different, whatever. Like you've got guys who are standing there, like Scott Lawton's in the picture, and Sanheim's in the picture, and Sealer's in the picture, and Ristolainen's in the picture. And these are guys who have played for a while, obviously, right?
Experience.
Couturier's in the picture. Yeah,
Did Rista play with Erik Johnson in Buffalo?
No, because Johnson was only there last year.
Oh, okay. You're right. Okay. I
So
forgot how long he was there.
He only played 50 games with Buffalo, got traded to Philly.
Oh, okay.
And to be honest, I'm not trying to take this further than what it is. I wonder if there is a slight underlying message, because Johnson's talked about a lot, like The culture here is great. It's one of the best places I've ever played. He's played what, 20 some odd games here, because he got here with maybe 15 to go, and now he's played probably
another
like
15 or
12,
so.
yeah, maybe 15 like tops, like to make it work out or whatever. Like he wasn't playing every game. He was in the Mark Stahl role more or less this year.
Totally.
Well, before that 50 games in Buffalo or whatever, we're talking he was with Colorado. Well, he obviously loved the culture in Colorado because you won a cup there. It had to be healthy. There's no way around it.
It's Nathan McKinnon's locker room. Like, it's going to be a healthy environment.
So, like, maybe things weren't like the greatest in Buffalo.
Oh, and can you really be surprised? Like, they haven't made the playoffs in a decade and a half. It's bad there, man. Respectfully to Buffalo, because their fans deserve so much better. Tough one.
I was thinking that watching the game too, where it's like they go down 4-0 in this game, and it's like, remember when they got off to a good start this year, and it was like, oh, maybe, and now it's
same old Sabres. But okay, so
I mean, the Flyers have made a killing this week off of beating the teams that like hover around the playoff picture every year and don't make it, right? Like,
Yep. So we did just want to extend to Erik Johnson. Congratulations! 1,000 games in the NHL is a hell of an accomplishment.
one of the nicest guys you could talk to. He's a gem. Like,
and that is everything I hear as well, for sure.
Good sense of humor with it. Like, he even said, glad this is over with because I don't want, like, the attention can finally come off of me. I don't want this, all that stuff. Like, he's that guy. And I think that's like, it's great. He's been, from that perspective, it's fun to have a guy like that around. Absolutely. I love having a guy like that to be able to, like, he's one of those veterans you love having around after a game to talk to and things like that. So
absolutely. And
congrats to him.
Congrats to him. That is game number 1,000. He is very likely to draw in the lineup for game number 1,001 on Monday against the Colorado Avalanche. We talked about the fact that they're going to do the ceremony for him in front of his old team. So that's a really nice little gesture that works out really well.
I think Cam York is getting close, but I also don't think they're in any rush. Like,
why would they be?
Let's not do this.
You've been winning. The Flyers are getting points,
and that's not even, and that,
6 or 7 games.
To me, that's not even the reason. The reason to me is exactly what you've talked about with stuff with the gas tanks.
Well, right, and that's the other thing is just let it ride out. This is why you have Erik Johnson. Exactly why.
Yep.
But regardless, you play 3 games this week. They are all at home. The Flyers are in the midst of a 5-game homestand. You start Monday against the Colorado Avalanche, Wednesday against the Carolina Hurricanes. You see them for the first time since you played them in Carolina a couple of weeks ago. And then on Saturday, the first Michkov versus Bedard Bowl. The Chicago Blackhawks come to town for a 1:00 Eastern time matchup in Philadelphia. The young sensations from the 2023 NHL draft will go head to head for the first time.
I think that's important. Like, that's the important part of that matchup is that it's the two from the same draft. We started this week with the.
It is what a lot of people said were the best 2 players in the 2023 NHL draft.
I'm saying this week started with the San Jose game, and there was definitely, like, I put a focus on it too with the Michkov's probably playing because he was coming back from the 2 games.
Get him back in the lineup, get him going.
But we were kind of guessing because you never know.
Yeah.
You never know with John Tortorella.
And he did the right thing and put him back in the lineup.
And Macklin Celebrini on the other one, which by the way, total footnote because we didn't really talk about it, but Celebrini's a really good player.
Oh,
and he's going to be a really good player for a long time. Had some really good burst, more speed than I expected from him.
And you know what? Him and Michkov had a little tiny bit of sandpaper between the two of them.
Yeah, I mean, Michkov's got to watch that when you're going to overtime, but pick your spots a little better. But I get it,
or at least take the guy with you. But yeah, you get 3 home games this week.
Three really interesting ones to me because Chicago is what they are still, like, in their process to a degree.
Absolutely.
And Carolina, you've seen already, and we know how good they are or whatever. Usually, like, Colorado's a team we would include in the Carolina category.
They're more of the wagon side of things, typically. but they've been struggling this year. They're
You're
kind of
gonna
in the
play.
process of getting back into it. But
If you would have, but this is what I'm saying. If you would have said based on both the Flyer start and the Avalanche start, or whatever you want to look at with it, if I would have told you coming into this game on Monday, they're not like we're 19 games into the season for both teams. That's the 19th game of the season. If I would have told you they're both at 500 exactly, would that have shocked you?
yes, because I would expect Colorado to be higher.
Right.
Like that is
Well,
the shock of that. Like if you
and,
told me
well,
the Flyers were 500, I'd be like,
and even
that might
3
be a
weeks,
little bit of overperforming.
and even 3 weeks ago, to sit there and say, well, the Flyers, by the way, are going to get back to 500 by then too. Like,
Well, that would have been even more interesting.
Well, like Colorado got off to a bad start and then started to pick it back up a little bit and get to 500, and it's like, all right, it's leveling out a little bit. I watched I watched them play a couple games where it's like, oh yeah, they look as good as you can expect. Absolutely. And McKinnon's the top point producer in the league by far, it feels like. Among them, like Kaprizov's right there too, but they're the only two with 30, so it's not even close with the rest of the league. Like McKinnon's putting McDavid's numbers to shame this year so far.
Well, let Connor McDavid go. He always starts a little slow and then he starts throwing them up.
I'm not,
and
I'm not saying anything. I mean, McDavid just got to a huge milestone this week, obviously, with 1,000 points.
Remember when he hit 100 points in a 56 game season? Like, come on, come on, the kid's immune. Well, luckily we don't have to see him this week, but we do have to see Nathan McKinnon. So there is at least one mutant coming to town. Bedard's good, but I don't know if he's on mutant level with the talent surrounding him quite yet. So this is another week where if the Philadelphia Flyers stay hot, they can pick up 4, 5, 6 points. If they struggle, they could easily pick up 1, 2, 3 points. So we will see how the week goes. We have, like I said, some good home games. Kevin will be busy down at the Wells Fargo Center 3 times this week.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna have a week. All right.
And
the days off are equally as busy for me. That's why I'm saying.
Yep, absolutely. And then beyond just the live appearances, you can also follow the team and what Kevin has to say about them via social media at Kevin_Durso, at Kevin Durso on Blue Sky. And then we are at YWT Podcast everywhere, all the social medias. You can find us everywhere you find your podcast, including sportstalkphilly.com. We'll be back next week. I think that's about it. Is there anything else you had for us this week, Kevin?
No, just enjoy the games because there's a lot at home right now. And
absolutely, the Flyers are playing okay. We got a whole bunch of home games. Theoretically, it's a good time for Flyers hockey right now. So we will be back next week to talk about these 3 games. Check us out on our YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button. And until then, we'll see you.